Another episode of Insights and Ideas. What's up, social media? What's up, YouTube? Today, I'm going to use as the launching point for my own personal contribution uh, a paragraph from a book called My Life by Bill Clinton. Now, this book is about the life of President Bill Clinton leading up to um, basically the end of his presidency. He wrote another book or two or three after leaving office in 2001. So I just happened upon a chapter that features the run up to Bill's first presidential campaigning, which goes back as far as 1985, as far as I know, and extends more or less through the 1988 presidential race, which Bill Clinton didn't win. In fact, no Democrat won. And by the way, just so you know, I'm not political, not a Democrat, not a Republican. I was raised in a very, very liberal household of proud Democrats. My parents were both proud lifetime Democrats. My father, may he rest in peace, and my mother, at the ripe old age of 98, is still proud liberal, progressive liberal. Anyway, from page 319 of Bill Clinton's opus, My Life. I also engaged in some national political activity in 1985. In February, I narrated the Democrats' response to President Ronald Reagan's State of the Union address. The State of the Union was a great forum for President Reagan's speaking skills. And whoever gave our brief response had a hard time making any impression. Our party took a different tact that year, featuring the new ideas and economic achievements of several of our governors and mayors. I also got involved in the newly formed Democratic Leadership Council, a group dedicated to forging a winning message for the Democrats based on fiscal responsibility, creative new ideas on social policy, and a commitment to a strong national defense. Well, that's all I have to say. And by the way, if you've hopped in the middle of this little video blog, welcome. I just read a paragraph from the autobiography of President Bill Clinton, which excerpt, as I mentioned, goes back to Governor Bill Clinton's work in 1985 when he was the governor of Arkansas and not even a potential candidate for the 1988 presidential nomination. So, fiscal responsibility, sound economic policy, sound social ideas, and new ideas relative to national defense. Well, I garbled Bill's exact phraseology, but this is, after all, quite ancient history. Back, when dinosaurs just stopped roaming the earth in 1985. Most of y'all watching today may not have been out of preschool by that time. Although, kudos to those who are of my generation and even older who are watching, because you folks lived through that, as did I. 1985, I was a second year law student at Duke University, and deep in the books and studying hard and trying to stay focused on the law rather than politics, for two reasons. Number one, I was led to believe, even before I went to law school, that law is not a political game. It's not a game at all. It's justice. Justice is not a game. Justice is real life. Justice is, like Paul Newman said, a character played by the actor Paul Newman said in one of my favorite movies, justice is like a prayer. Justice is something that you can't really put into a little category and define clearly. It either happens or it doesn't. And many times it doesn't, even when everybody's acting like it is happening. Be that as it may, that was my perspective as a second and first year and third year law student at Duke University in the 80s. And my philosophy has not changed in over 40 years. Really, 41 years since I walked into Duke University Law School, August of 1984. So My concern about the perspective offered by someone like Bill Clinton is that he has a track record. And in the 90s, when he actually became president, he adopted a very tough on crime approach, which still ripples and percolates to this day. Look, this is a video blog here of my personal insights and ideas, but I can't overlook the fact that I'm a practitioner of law in New York State family court and criminal court. So putting aside all the draconian things that may have happened to, shall we call them gangbangers and really tough people, gunslingers and murderers and rapists, putting aside all of those impacts from the tough on crime approach of the New Democrats, which Bill Clinton embodied in the late 80s and into the 90s during his presidential years, putting aside that aspect, the thing I want to harp on and complain about is what I like to proverbially call the deadbeat dad law. And I honestly cannot even tell you the precise name of the statute, but it was embodied in something that Bill Clinton championed and got passed, known as welfare reform. So maybe about 2 or 3 years into the Clinton administration, there was a nationwide reevaluation of the idea of welfare. And one of the things that was done in that nationwide reform was to toughen the powers of both courts and social service agencies and also motor vehicle agencies, state and nationwide, to punish fathers, particularly, for failures to pay child support. Huge, huge, immensely important. Now, what was the state of the law before that? I have no idea. What was the state of the law in the immediate aftermath of the Clinton reforms? I have no idea. I began the practice of this particular niche area of practice in the early 2000s as my career began to roll towards what it is today. And I began involvement and experience with what's called child support violation and willfulness in 2004. Okay. That's only 21 years ago. The law has not changed. The law is tough. The law is harsh. The law is rigid. The law is unforgiving in many respects. And the law comes down to dollars and cents in New York State. Now, remember, this is simply a video blog where I throw out my ideas to whomever. You could be in Pennsylvania, you could be in Vermont, you could be in Texas, you could be in California, you could be in China or on the moon. Probably not China right now due to stuff that's going on between our countries. But you could be anywhere watching my video blog. It doesn't need to be seen through the lens of Section 454 of the New York State Family Court Act and Section 439B, I believe, which enumerates the powers of unelected family court support magistrates to make findings of willful violation of child support arrears, such that a judge will then likely rubber stamp the magistrate's findings of fact and lock somebody up for 6 months. 6 months. Very serious stuff. Immensely serious stuff. And I've had cases by the dozens, if not the hundreds, of folks, typically fathers, but every now and then a mother, whose parental rights may indeed be in the process of being terminated due to an unrelated allegation of child abuse, child neglect, abandonment, chronic mental illness, etc., domestic violence, etc., such that that parent, biological parent, typically a father, may not have seen the subject child in months, if not years, and yet being continued to be mandated to be having paychecks garnished, or being found in willful violation of an obligation to get higher paying employment, such that jail door locks. 6 months later, that person walks out free, but with a finding, not a criminal finding, but a finding of willful violation, which is a gray idea in New York law, in New York jurisprudence, halfway between civil and criminal contempt, but boy, does it sting. I could talk for hours about the practical implications of a finding of willful violation of a New York family court child support order. And I keep saying family court. One thing that people may often get wrong and do is that the powers of a divorce judge are coterminous under New York structure. So let it never be thought that a person could be exempt from a finding of willful violation in the context of a very seemingly benign divorce litigation in the Supreme Court. People often have stereotypes that if they're not in family court, then they can get away with a lot of stuff, especially if they have a fancy lawyer. No, 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 no. If a judge accepts evidence that a person has defied a court order requiring weekly or bi-weekly or monthly contributions of a set amount of money, it doesn't matter if that person says that they're ill. It doesn't matter if that person says that they've been out of the workforce. It doesn't matter if that person says that the job they used to hold no longer exists due to automation, AI, etc., bankruptcy of the company, etc. Nor does it matter if the child in question is over the age of 18 or even 21, because guess what? First of all, child support in New York State continues past the 18th birthday. So this subject is just something that's near and dear to my heart. And I honestly don't think that this gentleman, who is now not as youthful and vital as he was when we left the White House, could have possibly foreseen all the deleterious and, shall we say, conservative consequences of what was intended as a rather benign effort by a vision known as the New Democrat, or the centrist New Democrats, to dial back and roll back some of the prior liberal visions articulated by folks like John Kennedy, who was a mentor to President Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton, as I recall, worked at the White House when he was a teenager. There's photographs of this somewhere in this book. Bill Clinton at the White House shaking the hand of John F. Kennedy in the early 1960s, when I was still in diapers, by the way. So there you go. What goes around comes around. Life is peculiar. Life is fascinating. And this is one of the reasons, as a practitioner, after more than close to 2.5 decades of litigating in the trenches of family court and Supreme Court of New York State, that I see the world through the lens of right down the middle, just the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Let's cut out the ideology. Can we just cut to the, I wanted to look for my calculator. I don't even have a calculator. Cue to the calculator. Let's get the bookkeeper in here. Let's get the auditor in here. Let's get a CPA in here. Let's add up the numbers. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the evidence. Let's look at the reality. So that's kind of my approach as a practitioner. Oh, I've just gotten that off my chest. I feel so much better. How's your day going? Are you staying hydrated? Because guess what? Inside this beautiful travel mug is plain hot water. The idea is by staying hydrated and consuming beverages, I won't get myself into hot water by saying something inappropriate. All right, thank you for swimming by my corner of the social cyber media universe. May your next pit stop on your journey through the information superhighway be just as entertaining and informative. See you next time.